Look, my top rated book on confidence is called The Super You. I'm sending it to you, physical book, free. Go to the link down there. You got it.
DreAllDay.com.
Congratulations, you are tuned into the show where you learn the discipline of showing up day after day to do the work, confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you're going to become a go-getter with a personal initiative to go make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Putting all this together, you get the mindset, the method, the podcast known as Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day. Welcome to the show. Today's topic, how to be more creative. Would you like to be more creative? Would you like to come up with some better ideas, some new solutions, new ways of doing things, maybe a new idea for your business, new idea for what you're doing at work, a creative solution for a challenge that you've been dealing with in the short term or in the long term? If so, today is the episode for you. Let's get a definition of this word creative, first of all. It means relating to or involving imagination or original ideas. Good definition. I want to say it again. Relating to or involving imagination or creative ideas. See, when people get creative, we get new stuff, all right? New things, new items, whatever it is you're listening to on this. Somebody had to be creative in order for you to have that item in your hand right now. Can we agree? For you to be listening to this podcast, somebody had to be creative in coming up with this topic and designing the device that allows it to stream from wherever it's coming from to wherever you're at. There's a lot of creativity to have to go into that. The clothes that you're wearing, somebody designed those. The car that you're riding in, the train that you're riding on, the building that you're in, somebody had to come up with a creative idea, something that didn't exist already, in order for that to exist and in order for you and I to enjoy it. So when people are creative, we get new things, we get new ways of doing things. By definition, though, I want to be clear. If somebody is telling you how to be creative, you may not get much creativity as a result. I'm completely aware of this, that if another person is telling you, hey, this is how you be creative, it may not be very creative, whatever it is they're telling you, but I'm going to try anyway. Okay. I'm going to go after this anyway. So if I fail, you can tell me that I failed. You listen to this episode first, use the things that I tell you, and then you can tell me afterwards if this worked or if it didn't work. So let's get right into it. How to be more creative in life. Number one, you got to combine the unrelated together to see what you come up with that's new. See, being creative doesn't mean that you have to just be this evil genius, just comes up with these new ideas that just came out of the sky, that was just floating by on the ether, that you just picked up out of nowhere, and people are like, wow, I never even considered that idea. It just come out of not even out of left field. Not left field, right field. It's not any field that we already know. It's coming out of some other field, that a word that I don't even have to describe it right now. You don't have to be that person to be creative. All you have to do, one way to be creative, is to take things that already exist, that you already know about, and just combine them. Maybe just combining them, period, is something that no one ever thought of, or combine them in a way which no one ever has done before, or combine a certain number of things in a way that nobody's ever thought of it, nobody's ever done it, or nobody's been ever able to make it work. All right? Because the Wright brothers were the first people to get an airplane to fly, but they weren't the first people to try. They weren't the first people to put effort into it. They weren't the ones with the most money. It's just they combined their idea with the existing technology and maybe a little bit of ingenuity and a little bit of luck in a way to make it work. So being creative doesn't mean you have to be this genius coming up with brand new ideas. I mean, think about something like Twitter. We took short messages, kind of like what we do with texting, right? And then blogging, something that we can post to the internet publicly for everybody to see. And we came up with Twitter. That's pretty much what Twitter is, right? Short messages, like stuff that you say in a text. And then we combined it with publishing to the internet publicly. And now you got Twitter. We took social media, was the place that people go to be silly and tell jokes and see what everybody else is doing and talk about stuff. And then we took the professional business world, which is where we put all the silliness and the jokes and talking about everybody else. We put all that to the side, right? So we can focus on work and making our money and running our businesses. Somebody said, why don't we put those two together? They put them together, and what we got was LinkedIn. See, the best part of being creative and combining these related ideas that people already know about, is that you don't have to be this smart person making up ideas from absolutely nothing. I mean, the way that I built my brand was really the main thing that got most people to know me from the beginning. Establishing the foundation was making videos on YouTube of me playing and practicing basketball. I did not invent basketball. I've been around for a very long time before I started putting videos on YouTube. I didn't invent YouTube, even though I was one of the early adopters getting on it, using it a lot. I just combined basketball with the internet. And I actually wasn't the first person to do that. It was the specific thing that I was doing. It wasn't just basketball. It was that I was in the gym practicing by myself every single day, recording it every day and putting it on the internet. That combination. So it was basketball plus the internet, but it was more detail in basketball, and it was more detailed in the internet. It was video on the internet, and it was practicing basketball. Those are the things that made it unique. Those are the things that made it a creative new idea, but those weren't brand new things. Everybody knew about the internet. People knew you could put video on the internet, even though it wasn't a ubiquitous thing. People knew about basketball, and people knew about practicing basketball. All I did was just be the first to establish that there was a connection there and do something about it in a way that people had to associate my name and my likeness with whatever it was that was going on. So all you had to do, number one way to be creative, or the first way I'll say to be creative, is combine known ideas that may seem completely unrelated. Number two, today's topic is how to be more creative. Look for the bigger problems to solve. Look for bigger problems for yourself, or look for the bigger problems that maybe you put to the side because you can't figure out a solution, or a bigger problem that maybe you never even paid attention to because you said it ain't my business. But the bigger the problem it is that you look for, the reason why this is part of being more creative, the bigger the problem, the more creative you're going to have to be. Because usually the conventional, the known, the stuff that we have already tried before, stuff we've already done before, stuff that everybody already knows about, the ubiquitous, probably isn't going to solve the biggest problems. Because if it could solve the biggest problem, it wouldn't be the biggest problem. You understand? What makes a problem big is the fact that it's been allowed to fester, it's been sitting around for a long time, and nobody can figure out what it is. See, a problem is not, it's not even that a problem gets big, it's that the problem is old, right? It's the old problems. It's like Drake said in his song. He said, my problems are old, but my money is young. Right? I think that's what he said. Find bigger problems to solve, and you will have to get more creative in handling that issue. The less you'll be able to rely on the old tactics to handle whatever that situation happens to be. Point number three, today's topic, how to be more creative. Do not worry about being right, quote unquote, and don't worry about your idea working, quote unquote. When you're being creative, it's not about everything turning out perfect. It is not about you always producing a result, even depending on what the situation is. It's about you allowing your brain to just be open, let it be unconstricted, let it step outside of the box of these are the things we can do, here are the parameters of what we can't do. Let your mind step outside of all of that and just see what it comes up with. You let your mind just be free and see what it comes up with. This is when you get creative. But if you're boxing yourself in saying, well, we can't do this, we can't do that, it can't involve this, we can't talk about that, we can't say this, I can't think about that, you're probably not going to be very creative. And some people live their whole lives in this boxed in mindset, and this is why they don't come up with anything creative. I mean, you could just be around a person and tell if they're creative enough or not. All right, you can feel their energy, you can tell by the way they talk, you can see the things that they do. Sometimes you can even tell by the way that somebody dresses, the way that somebody walks, if they're creative enough. And the thing about being creative, again, yes, some people do have a talent for it. Yeah, there are some people out there who can just come up with ideas out of the blue for certain things that they have a talent for it, or maybe a skill because they practice it a lot. But anyone can be creative if they allow themselves to step outside of that box. The challenge for most people is that, number one, they don't even know they're in a box. And the challenge for the people who do know that they're in a box is that they can't allow themselves mentally to step outside of it. They've been in it so long that it's kind of like Stockholm syndrome. They start to love the box so much that they can't get outside of it. All right, keep your minds out of the gutter, a few of you. Don't worry about being right. Don't worry about things working. If it has to work, it probably won't be very creative. Whatever ideas you're coming up with have to work. They have to be able to be put into some practical use that produces some acceptable result. Practical and acceptable, probably not going to lead to very creative. Not all the time, at least not that combination, especially when we talk about that word acceptable. Except that most of what you come up with is not going to become the next Facebook or the next Instagram. Be okay with having some ideas when you're being creative that just don't work. Sometimes I come up with topics for this podcast that when I'm just thinking about it and I'm straining my brain trying to come up with how could I explain this, or how could I make sense of this, or how could I make this into a good topic that I can share, and I just don't come up with it. I don't come up with enough material to make it worthy of being an episode of this podcast, and I end up scrapping this. Okay, that one's just not going to work. Let me do it different. Let me work on this. Let me do this episode on how to be more creative instead of this other episode that I was thinking about doing, and that's all right. It's all right to have things that don't work, that don't produce the desired outcome, that doesn't make you look more quote unquote productive. And I know there are a lot of people out there, especially you business people, you entrepreneurs, who beat yourself up mentally every day, week after week, year after year, because you feel like you're not being quote unquote productive enough. You don't feel like you're doing enough based on your situation or based on your age or your money or your business or compared to what you see somebody else doing on the internet. Listen, allow yourself when you're being creative to have some bad ideas. The more bad ideas you go through, eventually you're going to stumble upon a good one. This is what I talked about in my ideas episodes, and that full archive again is at dreallday.com/podcast. Be okay with ideas that just don't work. Your mind will get comfortable. What happens when you get okay with having ideas that don't work is that your mind gets comfortable understanding that you don't have to be perfect all the time, that you don't have to be right all the time, that everything you come up with does not have to work. It doesn't have to be placed into some box. It doesn't have to fit somebody's program or parameters. You can just be creative. It can be stupid. It can make no sense. It can be something that's not even possible given what we know about human beings and science right now. It's okay to come up with those ideas, because when your mind gets conditioned to know that it's all right to come up with weird, crazy, and never will work ideas, literally never will work, your mind's going to start giving you more, because it sees it as being positively. It's not getting that negative reinforcement that says, all right, that was stupid. Don't do that again. Don't try that again. That's a waste of time. Can't ever come up with that. That negative reinforcement, all that does is move whoever you're negatively reinforcing. Whatever they did before that negative reinforcement, they're just going to stop doing it. They just won't do any more of that thing. Sometimes. Not all the time. Maybe with a kid, if they're bad and you punish them, they might be bad again, because that's the only way they can get attention from you. But in this situation of coming up with ideas, you negatively reinforce it by telling yourself you're dumb. That's a stupid idea. It's a waste of time. Your brain's going to say, okay. The creativity part of your brain is going to say, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. We won't try that anymore. We're not going to give you any more ideas. And then you end up in the box. Don't even know that you're in the box until you go into the box, the final box. The more your mind gets comfortable with trying things that don't work, the more creativity it will deliver to you. These are the ways that you be creative. Let's recap today's topic, which is how to be more creative. Number one, combined, unrelated, seemingly unrelated, yet known topics or known ideas in ways that maybe they have never been combined before. Or if you just combine them, might be brand new. If you just take two basic things and combine them, don't even have to figure out the way. But you got to look at those things and ask yourself, how can I make a relationship between these two to make it into something that's useful to me? And this is also a way that you can find a career for yourself. Look at some unconventional ways of doing things that have not yet been combined, and boom, you got something brand new that could become a thing that everybody else is doing 5 years from now. Number two, look for bigger problems to solve, or look at the bigger problems in your life that you have yet to solve, and think of ways that you could solve it. If I had to solve this today, what would I do? That's a great question. If I had to figure out a way to make these two things work together, how would I do it? See, these are the questions. These are the better questions that you ask yourself that empowers your mind to start thinking, coming up with ideas. Not saying, is there any way that this and this could go together? Because you could easily say no. That's the easiest thing your brain wants to default to, because it saves it time, space, energy, saves it everything. It's trying to reserve resources. But if you ask yourself the question, what's a way that short posts and the internet could be brought together? What's a way that I can combine text messaging and blogging? What's a way that I can combine the professional business world where people are serious with social media? And this is where you get the creative ideas. You got to be willing to ask these ideas. And sometimes you're going to ask the idea and you won't have an answer. And that's okay, people. Even if you may have an answer that's completely ridiculous, can never be worked, that's all right. Point number three, rather. Don't worry about being right. Don't worry about your idea working. If it has to work, it's not going to be very creative. Except that what you come up with may not be the next billion-dollar idea. Just be okay with coming up with ideas that do not work at all. Because the more you get comfortable trying new ideas and coming up with new creative ideas, your brain will say, okay, you're giving me positive feedback for doing this. I'm going to do some more of it. And eventually you're going to come up with a great idea that could be the idea that changes your life. You never know, but you got to try it to find out. Work on your game. DreAllDay.com.